on this one as well, if I'm not mistaken. President Trump comes out and says Venezuela to give up 50 million barrels of oil to the U.S. I am pleased to announce that the interim authorities in Venezuela will be turning over around 30 to 50 million barrels of quality sanctioned oil to the U.S. This oil will be sold at its market price, and the money will be controlled by me as the president of the United States of America to ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the U.S. I asked Energy Secretary Chris Wright to execute this plan immediately. It will be taken by storage ships and brought directly to unloading docks in the U.S. Thank you for your attention to this matter. He is such an interesting guy. Thank you for your attention to this matter. We just got 50 million barrels, folks. And Trump in his social media post, it will take, the U.S. crude oil, crude futures fell 1.3% to 56.39 per barrel on the heels of Trump's announcement. The announcement came 3 days after U.S. captured Maduro. Wall Street Journal reported Tuesday that Trump plans to meet with representatives from the major oil companies, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, Exxon Mobil, along with other domestic producers at the White House on Friday to discuss making significant investments in Venezuela oil sector. Now watch this. Here's what's interesting. While this is going on, China's like, wait a minute, that's ours. That's not yours. Here's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from China giving their message. Go ahead, Rob.
The United States has brazenly resorted to the use of force against Venezuela and demanded that America First be applied when Venezuela disposes of its own oil resources. This is a typical act of bullying, a serious violation of international law, and a grave infringement on Venezuela's sovereignty that also severely undermines the rights of Venezuelan people.
We just wish they would have thought of it first.
China strongly condemns this. I would like to stress that the legitimate rights and interests of China and other countries in Venezuela must be protected. The United States has long imposed illegal unilateral sanctions on Venezuela's oil sector and has recently brazenly used force against Venezuela, dealing a severe blow to the country's economic and social order and also threatening the stability of global production and supply chains. China has already issued strong condemnation in this regard. I would like to reiterate that cooperation between China and Venezuela is a cooperation between sovereign states and is protected by international law and laws of both countries.
For sure. Tom, how do you feel about this?
Oh, first of all, who is she from? She was from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I thought the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was something that involved Eric Swalwell. So we'll pass on that. Second, here's something fun facts. Fun facts. Ready for numbers scream? The total output right now during the naval semi-blockade from Venezuela is 600,000 barrels a day. That is the output right now. The nominal output when they were under this over the last couple of years, when they've got electricity shortages and all the things that the problems they had in their economy, was 800,000 to 900,000 barrels a day. The logical limit, based on every pipeline and the port, there's a port Jose and there's a second port. There's two main ports, is only 1.7 million barrels per day. That means if everything was working perfectly right in Venezuela and the ports were operating at maximum efficiency and all the pipelines that go into this huge center geography that's in Venezuela and this big valley where all the oil is, we're all working maximum to 1.7. So what Trump is basically saying right now, somewhere between 600 and 900 barrels a day, for the next 90 days, if he wanted to, he could step on the air hose to China and Iran and only send the oil here. Now, there's also something very interesting. Venezuelan oil, because you've heard people talk about light sweet crude and West WTI, West Texas Intermediate, which is the Permian Basin. There's all different types of oil, and just like there's different types of gasoline and aviation gas. Well, guess what? Venezuelan crude is known as heavy crude. And heavy crude needs special refineries who can handle the heavy crude. And would you like to know where the most heavy crude refineries are? And the answer is the United States Gulf Coast, particularly
Gulf of America.
The Gulf of America. Houston Galveston has the most facility in the world to refine Venezuelan oil. Almost like the U.S. oil makers knew or were buying from Venezuela all along and had the facilities so when they got that type of crude, they could turn it into the big four: automobile gas, heating oil, aviation fuel, and then all the derivative products that come out of a barrel of oil, the plastics and plastic-like items. Right. So what's going on right now, there's only one U.S. Oil company operating at speed, and that's Chevron, and they're getting about 250 million barrels a day. So guess what? So if he's going to have a meeting in the White House, really, he's really asking Chevron, are you going to put up more money for infrastructure, number one, because they want to move that well beyond 1.7 million barrels a day. They want to get up to 2.5, 3 million barrels a day. That's going to take pipelines, and that's also, I won't get into technology of it, but Venezuela pumps most of their oil cold, meaning they don't put steam or other things into the ground to pull it out. Like what they do, like for the oil sands in Alberta and the shale that's in North Dakota. They use a lot of heat to go down there, loosen up the oil so it can pull it up. So what the president is basically saying here is like, you know what, China, you were skimming out the back door a couple 100,000 barrels a day, and they needed it. So Trump's going to put a stop to that. So China is going to have have access to that.
Move.
That's the power move.
What a move.
And then never mind Iran, what's going on over there. And now he's wants to take it, but he wants to pay the people. He wants Chevron to pay the people of Venezuela. He wants to get up to 2.5, 3 million barrels a day, but he wants the people of Venezuela to be paid for it. You know why that's good? Every time we try to rebuild the country, who pays for it? We do. We gave all those contracts to Halliburton when we were rebuilding the Middle East after wars, right? Well, guess what? They came out of American taxpayers. Well, now this is, hey, we have regime change. We have some government we like. There's going to be some bumps in the road. This is all going to go there, and we want their country to get the money for their oil so they could rebuild themselves. Now, sure, there'll probably be a lot of American contractors down there wanting to get paid to do it, but it'll be money that comes that way. And that is the story of Venezuelan oil.
How much of this do you think, like I almost want to think about how much of Venezuela, of what happened with Maduro was singular, and how much of it was a process of sequencing because of the ties Venezuela could have for America to get access back to the Panama Canal, because the Panama Canal, like if I was to write a priority, Tom, and this goes to all of you guys, question for you. You're the president, Trump administration, you're sitting there. 10 issues. Rank importance of some of these issues. Which one's more important than other? Ready? Mm-hmm. Hang on. Maduro being captured. You got Iran regime changing, okay, because of how chaotic it is. And you know how they call them the Middle East. What do they call it? There's a word for it, that they are the agency of terrorism in the Middle East. You hear a comment like that. Yeah. Sponsors of terrorism in Iran. Okay. All right. So
money and influence.
How about Panama Canal? Let's just take those three. Of those three, which one do you think is number one most important to U.S.? Panama Canal, Iran,
probably Panama,
Venezuela.
I would say the canal, because once you get the canal off of Chinese influence, so they needed the canal and they also needed the metal in Venezuela because that's how they get the oil.
Perfect. So then China's the one that stopped the Panama Canal deal with Hutchinson, right?
Right.
They
That's
came in
exactly
and put
when
a
they
stop
told
to
the
it.
guy he couldn't sell his shares.
So do you think this is their way of saying, no problem, you want to do that, we've been allowing you to come and get all this oil from the Western Hemisphere, Venezuela, here's what we're going to do to you. Go ahead. Now what do you want to do? So is he going to use this as a leverage on the tariffs with China? Because I know they've set it up. You know, they're like, we'll renegotiate the China stuff in 90 days or a year or whatever. They kind of put it off. But do you think this is one way of getting the Panama? Like if all of a sudden, because look what happened right there. Look at the date and look at what happened with the percentage increases, chances going up. It went from 30 to 40%. What caused that? Venezuela. Yeah. Why does the Venezuela event increase the chance? So there's some ties there between the two. What do you think, Jeff?
I think these are all related. I think these, Trump has this image among, certainly his detractors. He's some kind of buffoon, right? They are playing strategic chess here. Everything they're doing is not. It's not like we're going to get Maduro because we want a regime change in Venezuela. They're getting Maduro because it's the most efficient use of resources, because it accomplishes 4 goals at once.
That's the first domino.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at what they're trying to do, Iran plays in this too.
I think
how do you mess with the Chinese? Well, you get them distracted over in the Middle East. And having worried about all the stuff that's taking place over there, is Iran, which is an ally of China, are they solid enough? Are they going to be a solid Chinese ally in a couple months maybe? And this goes back to why did the U.S. strike the Iranian nuclear facilities? Well, yes, more than one goal was accomplished in that strike. First of all, it set back the Iranian nuclear capacity, but also showed to the Iranian people that the Iranian military is toothless. They had Israeli planes and U.S. planes loitering over the country for, weeks on end?
Yep.
And they could do they were taking out Iranian leaders. It was sending a message. And it wasn't sending a message to just the Iranian people that says, look, these leaders aren't as powerful as you think it is. It was a message to China. Look at what we can do. Look at what we can do in Venezuela. And by the way, Venezuela is hyper strategic. And it's not just about Venezuela. Venezuela, as you said, the next step toward reasserting dominance on Panama Canal and a whole bunch of other stuff that we probably don't even know about. What I'm saying is I think the Trump administration doesn't act on simplistic impulses and irrational emotion as people have this caricature.
The media paints it out to be.
Yeah, it's not. There you can see there is definite strategic planning going on.
So let me ask you, if they're saying Western Hemisphere, right? Look, this is the Western Hemisphere, the Monroe Doctrine, right? 1800s.
Monroe.
So Western Hemisphere. Well, then somebody could say from China, well, then why do you care about Iran? Or do they? Are they leaving it out there? It's interesting, right, when you think about it. But what are your thoughts on the story here with Venezuela?
No, I think it's a huge opportunity just for the world in general. Because I mean, there was a time where I believe Venezuela was number 4 in terms of overall GDP, and it makes me think of when the Soviet Union collapsed. That if you handle this thing correctly, then you could open up that whole country back to the world as a new market. And you have to be careful with managing it too, because I think like when the Soviet Union collapsed, we kind of mishandled it. We let the CIA, let the oligarchs take over, and then the resentment from the country to that led to Putin being in control. So I think if this is done correctly, it could be a beautiful thing. It could kind of get that communist virus out of South America, because the whole communist spread across South America started with Cuba, then it went over to Venezuela, and now it's gone